You're listening to the Gold Standard Podcast. I'm your host, three-time Olympian and motivational speaker, Leah Amico. On this show, we're going to dig deep to unlock what it actually takes to build a foundation for greatness. If you're an ambitious person with big vision, but you feel like fear is holding you back, get ready for some major breakthroughs. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Gold Standard Podcast. Today's guest was a second-round draft pick by the Chicago Bulls. He played 4 seasons in the NBA. He won an NBA championship with the Lakers in 1987. He has gone on to be an ESPN college basketball analyst, which he currently does now, as well as he's been a professional speaker for over 28 years. Welcome to the show, Adrian Branch.
Wow, thank you. I'd like to meet that guy. You just sauced him up so much and sized him up. I'm like, oh, I want to meet this guy. Who is he?
That's right. With all these accolades, I know you have lots of great information to share with us today.
Wow.
Well, I'm excited to hear a little bit about your journey. First of all, tell me what it was like to win an NBA championship.
Oh, my goodness. It was super cool. I'm 23 years old. I'm coming from the Washington, D.C. area. The Lakers, Magic Johnson was my hero. So with shoes on, I'm 6'8". I get the height from my dad. So back in the 70s and 80s, there were 3 players you wanted to be like. You wanted to be like, if you were between 6'6" and 6'9", you wanted to be either Dr. J, Magic Johnson, or the Iceman, George Gervin. So those were one of the 3 you always wanted to be like. So I got a chance to play with Magic. It was a dream come true. It was the height of Showtime. Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Pat Riley, the GQ coach, and then Klay Thompson's dad from the Golden State Warriors, Michael Thompson, Michael Cooper. So you know what, Leah? Timing was everything. I was 23. And it was everything you can imagine. It was absolutely fantastic.
So did you grow up falling in love with basketball at a young age? Did you know, like, that's my goal one day, I'm going to be in the NBA?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. I get the height from my dad, and I'm left-handed like my dad, but I had 3 brothers. So all of us played sports. And I remember as a 4-year-old, Central High School in Seat Pleasant, Maryland, well before Kevin Durant put it on the map. I'm 4 years old at Central High School. I'm so excited. My dad was coaching my 2 older brothers, Tom, who went on to play at Old Dominion College, got a scholarship. And then my brother Phil went to play at Shepherdstown, West Virginia College. But I remember, I'm 4 years old, and I remember it like I'm talking to you right now. I was like, Dad, can I play? Can I play? And he said, all right, let me see how strong you are. A little left-handed, cocked that ball up, took a shot, and went right through the net right there, and was shooting ever since. So I still remember my first shot.
Oh, I love that. That's so exciting. And, I hear you say, being that younger brother, I feel like sometimes when you have these families that have multiple, whether it's girls or boys, and then all of a sudden the older ones are playing, it's almost like that younger one is able to reach higher heights because they watch what the older ones are doing, and maybe they do start younger. Was that the case for you?
Well said. So it took out all the fear. So I remember my dad saying, if one of y'all fight, we grew up in Seat Pleasant, Maryland, hard-working suburb. It's 1 mile outside of the D.C. line. My mom and dad grew up in Northeast D.C., and their backyards touched each other. So my mom is the 4th oldest of 11. My dad's the oldest of 5. And so I got, over 40 first cousins or so in the D.C. area, just a mob of folks. But I remember the mindset being the 3rd. My dad said, look, if one of y'all fight, all of y'all got to fight. So I was like, ooh, I'm figuring that out. My brother Tom got to throw hands. My brother Phil got to throw hands. I can talk all the trash I want because I ain't got to back it up. They got to fight for me. But fortunate, we had a hardworking, great neighborhood. People loved each other. But I always had that in mind. I could talk all the trash I wanted because my brother's got to do the fighting for me.
That is funny. Did you have that support then from your parents to be able to go?
Absolutely. They wanted us, to stay out of trouble. And so football, basketball, baseball, we just played sports year round. And so my dad he was our coach, Big Charlie. He was a no-nonsense guy. All the hard heads in the neighborhood respected him. The good guys respected him, had big respect. And he was my example of a coach. He knew how to talk talk to folks. He knew when to hug and when to bug, and he was a commanding presence. So just like you mentioned, your college coach that just was just amazing, communicated well. He believed in you and had a can-do, attaboy, attagirl. I once heard that it takes for every negative comment, it takes 100 attaboys. It takes 100 attagirls to wash it through. Another one I heard, it's like a 6-to-1 ratio. So when you get that sincere parent or coach or mentor that's like, I believe in you, attaboy, attagirl, that pays dividends.
You know, I can remember when I was coaching a high school team here in Southern California, and this one athlete, she was young, and we put her on varsity, and she was a role player, right? So I finally would give her a chance to hit, and I just could see all this pressure she was putting on herself, and she was trying to, with one at bat, earn the starting role. But the idea was, instead of thinking like, no, like this is an awesome opportunity, I'm young, I'm going to have my time. And I remember trying to just believe for her, like, but the importance of believing in yourself. So you talked a little bit about mindset. Like, did you grow up with a really strong mindset? Like, I can do anything?
Absolutely. It ain't a fair fight how I believe. I was always naturally gifted, playing sports and could talk and was liked. You can make friends easily. That's what I want to say. You can make friends easily. But I always knew I was going to be a pro. I always knew I was going to play in the NBA. And I remember one time Hall of Famer James Worthy, my teammate, we were talking about that on the bus one time. And he talked about he always knew he was going to be a pro. And he used the example of Sylvester Stallone at the time, one of the top stars, he and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he also said, I always knew I was going to be a star. That's what Rocky said. But he probably didn't say he always knew he was going to have to pay 5 wives either. Alimony. I didn't say that one. But where I'm going with that, Leah, is you kind of, for some people, they always knew they were going to do something. I always knew I was going to travel, and I always knew I was going to have a beautiful family, because at times, though we were a hardworking family, we were also very dysfunctional. So I always knew dreaming was no problem. I got stuff right here, right now, man. If you Walt Disney, it's fun to do the impossible. I got this persistence. This is in my office. You beat resistance with persistence. So when you talk about motivation, when you talk about encouraging folks, I'm gonna give you one more. This take up my whole screen. What? You ready for this one? Bang! This talks about be anxious for nothing. So where I'm going, that's been in my wheelhouse. I believe it. And it's been able to bear fruit for me for many, many years.
So what do you say to those people who are doubters and who are so hard on themselves and they have such negative self-talk, or maybe that person who wants to believe, but their setting and the people around them actually have told them they'll never amount to anything?
Well said. First of all, welcome to humanity. Welcome to real life. The world is always going to tell you you're not enough. The world always tells you you're not tall enough, you're not short enough, you're not slim enough, you're not trim enough, you're not cute enough, you're not brute enough, you're not street enough, you're not elite enough, you're not black enough, white enough, rich enough, poor enough to roll with me. The world is always going to tell you rule and rule, do and do. But for me, and I know you're familiar with it too, what voice are you listening to? The voice that has helped me, and I know speaking for you as well, the voice that has helped you and helped me is the word of God. Precious promises. What are you? You're accepted in the beloved. You're a champion. You're a winner. Shine like a star. Why? Nobody's ever told me that. Yes, they told you that. They told you that in the Bible. In Philippians, it says, shine like in a dark and depraved world. So, man, you ain't got to listen to the streets. The streets, that's why they're in the streets, because they always running their mouth. Don't listen to that garbage. You're enough. You're enough. You're enough. So I found my purpose in Christ. And I'm not going back, Leah.
Wow, that is so powerful. Yes, I think of the verse that says we are more than conquerors through Christ Jesus who loved us. And knowing that, it really does give you more confidence, more boldness. And if you already had some of that belief in what you wanted, you realize, wow, God made this part of my plan. He put this passion in front of me. And then he's part of the one that's going to open these doors, and I got to put in the work. So tell me, when did your faith become so important to you? When did you know that these truths?
Well, again, we weren't perfect. We were hardworking. There was also great dysfunction, but I grew up Catholic, and my mom big Catholic family. My dad, big Catholic family, and my grandmother fed the meals to the priest. And my mother is one of 11, and one of the twins, my aunt, sister B, Aunt B, was a nun. And so religion, church was always in our house. Now, again, I always like to just wear my hat sideways, and I knew right and wrong, but I always like being a little bit on the edge side, and I remember one time our colleague Daryl Colbert, who he said, "Hey, man, you turn your hat around, you turn your life around." But it became my own. It went from religion, 18 inches, to a relationship. When I was 30 years old, I was, because of the world championship with the LA Lakers playing in Australia, I was considered the most decorated athlete in Australia that ever played over there. And that is because, in fact, Ben Simmons, the great basketball player that went number one in the draft, I played against his dad, Big Dave Simmons, for 3 years. And what it was is it went 18 inches from religion to a relationship. And the pressure came off, Leah, where it was like, you don't have to perform. You don't have to walk around in shame. You don't have to walk around in guilt. Pass it to the Lord. Give it to the Lord. I got another one for you. Got another one for you. Oh, here it is. Oh, my daughter gave me this one, Jack, right here on my office. I got a few more too, but I'll save it throughout our talk.
For those people listening to the podcast, he just held up a cross, and he has all these things in his office, these different plaques that have sayings that encourage. Yes, encouragement.
I got to show you this one too. I'm going to show you this one too. You know what this one is? The Pyramid of Success. John Wooden. Woo! But you went to Arizona, so I don't know. I see that. I hate. I see that hate on the Christian program. Come on, don't.
UCLA was our biggest opponent because they were it. They were the team to beat when I was coming up. And Arizona had just come onto the scene as kind of being one of the nation's top teams. And then when I got there, we ended up winning 3 out of 4 national championships. We fell short to UCLA.
So why you roll your eyes? Why you roll your eyes when I just had the Pyramid of Success? You're giving back all your love and good work. You're like, oh, brother.
I love my UCLA friends and teammates. I played with so many UCLA players. And then also I got to meet Coach Wooden and everything he shares. And that's why I love he had that success, but his foundation was, really from the Bible, and then how he coached that way. Talk to me a little bit about playing overseas. What was that experience like? And did you learn stuff about yourself during that period of time?
Yeah, I learned, man. I learned get my money. Again, I'm going to turn that hat around again, Leah, as an example. I loved Israel. I played in Israel, Spain, Turkey, France, Australia, Thailand, the Philippines, and Dominican Republic. And it was the dark ages back then, man, where you had to get your money, if you could get it when you got paid, and then you would wire it home. Today, they're more civilized with it. They just pay you up front, or they just wire it to your account so it can go directly home. But I enjoyed it. I actually came to the Lord in Australia. And again, this Bible here, man, has just been my best friend. It's been resodded, it's been recovered. But there's a saying, worn out Bibles belong to people who aren't. So, man, read the word. The word of God will tell you that greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. The Bible will tell you that you're more than a conqueror. The world will change on you. The world is fickle. Think about it with Christ. Christ basically had a ticker tape parade 1 week earlier called Palm Sunday when they were laying down the palms. Now, 1 week later, these same people were saying, crucify him, get him out of here, flog them, spit on them, crown of thorns. And just the point I'm making is people are fickle. Don't believe the hype. Trust in what God says. Trust in people that'll really keep you accountable. Trust in people to be like, man, that wasn't funny. That joke wasn't funny. Trust in people that'll really check you and call you out, because that's where you have your greater balance. When you're off balance, I once heard a preacher say halt, HALT. Don't be too hungry, too angry, too lonely, too tired. Have a balance to yourself. And that's what the Lord said. Even the Bible says uneven scales are of no use to the Lord.
And so during that time, did you, a lot of athletes talk about playing free. Let's even say in the business world, right? We're constantly trying to work to achieve, and it's almost just this hamster cycle, right? So you just keep going, and you feel like, okay, wait, I maybe accomplished one goal, but now there's this next one, and it's just never ending. Were you able to find that balance between playing free, not finding your identity in what you did, but who you were? How was that challenge?
Great question again. It takes time. It really takes time, and it affects people differently. Now, in one area, I went from, because my mindset, I always want to be the best. I wanted to be the best ever. I want to be the best. Now, that's good to have the desire to try to be the best you can, but for whose glory? Is it for the glory of God or for the glory of self? About my fifth year in the pros, I played 11 years. I got to the point, basketball wise, where I said, I found that balance for me. I found that pocket. If it was music, you found that tempo, you found that rhythm, that airspace. And mine was simply this: let me do the absolute best I can. Let me do the best I can, and let me be healthy enough to do it again tomorrow. That's my entire goal. Because if I do the best I can, I'll feel good about my performance. My bosses, my teammates will feel better about my performance, and there'll be a greater consistency. And then the other thing, it's no fun when you're playing hurt. If you've got to play through an injured back, injured hand. Look at this pinky right here, Leah, on my shooting hand. It won't straighten up. But I played through that my entire career. And Larry Bird's got the same one. But the thing about it, the doctor told me I should have been in church. It was Sunday. I was a 12th grader in high school, and somebody kicked the ball right into my finger. And I had surgery. I was in a cast all the way up to my arm. I'm left-handed. But the doctor said, you drink a cup, you hold a steering wheel, and even a pencil or a pen. There's very few things you do straight out. So I had surgery on that little puppy, had surgery on my right knee, had a chipped kneecap. And I said, I ain't having another surgery. I'm mailing it in. I'm Milli Vanilli. I'm anything, brother. I ain't getting no more surgery. So let me do the best I can, and let me be healthy enough to do it again tomorrow.
And listening to you talk, those are a couple of challenges you had to face. I think, injuries in athletics, that's something, it's a challenge. Did being out during that time, did that maybe grow your passion? Did it teach you to where like maybe you focused a little bit more on the skills? Like what did that teach you?
Well, I kind of always knew I was, the game came easy to me. The game came easy to me. The athleticism came easy to me. And again, making friends came easy to me. And I was not one of those people like Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, as I was compared to these guys coming out of high school, like can't miss. Adrian Branch is a prodigy, can't miss. But I didn't fan my gift into a flame. I was just naturally gifted, naturally athletic, and naturally likable. And those can cut corners on you. You're cheating yourself. But you and I know that when you have an audience of one, when you're playing for the glory of God, the Bible tells you to fan your gift into a flame. So I didn't know, man, to be the first one there with a purpose and the last one to leave with a purpose, and to do it for the glory of God. And so I cheated myself. You never want to live with regrets. I would live with regrets. In fact, one of the biggest regrets I have is a name, Len Bias. Len Bias, the one who was one of America's greatest talents as a basketball player in 1986, 1 year after me at the University of Maryland. We were teammates. And roommates and neighbors. So he only lived 2 or 3 miles from me in the DC area. And I would pick him up on Sundays nights as we go in the campus his freshman year, because freshmen couldn't have cars. Unless you were at Arizona, they probably paid you out under the table like they do for us in Maryland. I don't know.
No way.
All right. We'll leave it at UCLA. All right. So anyway, my regret is I would have been a better team leader than ringleader in college, because Lenny died of cocaine, and I would have changed the atmosphere and at least been a better example for my teammates back then. So you don't want to live with regrets. That is the biggest regret that I've had in my life. And through the mercy of God, I'm learning to live in the moment. You can't go back, but you're darn sure, Lord willing, can go forward.
Yeah. So
And y'all still probably got paid under the table. I don't know. I don't know. Now it's Bitcoins, but I don't know.
I barely got paid, so I don't know what you're talking about. But um, then talk to me a little bit about teammates, because when I'm listening to you, that's what I'm hearing. Like you said, you were well liked and it was easy for you to make friends. And I look back at my experience on all my teams, and that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I really take pride in, were the relationships that I had on the field and off the field. The fact that we could talk softball, we could talk everything else. The fact that even though we maybe disagreed about everything, we loved each other. I think that's so important in teams. And I think successful teams have that type of a balance. So talk to me a little bit about, teamwork and the importance and getting along with others.
Well, everyone has a role, and I would recommend. I'm privileged to be a TV analyst for ESPN the last, oh my goodness, 18 years or so, and been in sports. I was privileged to be the Bobcats. They were the Bobcats, Michael Jordan's team now, the Hornets. First TV analyst back when they had Emeka Okafor as their first pick, and Dwight Howard, number 1 and 2 in the draft. And the more I'm around sports, and you and I are privileged to be around sports, the more I believe, man, when you can sacrifice, when you can bring your giftedness into a team and submit to that role, it helps you. That same practice can help you in your marriage, can help you in your church, can help you at the job, can help you in your family. Everyone has gifts and talents, but it's how willing are you to submit it to the greater part. So hindsight is 2020. Trying to live forward now, and it's like, don't be afraid to submit. Don't be afraid to sacrifice. Don't be afraid to not get the glory all at one time. Keep doing what you're doing, for in due season you'll reap a reward.
And that's part of my story, is just being willing to be moved. My coach made the decision to move me from pitcher to outfield. And, it's like you, I just was like, fine, then I need to learn to be the best outfielder. It's out of my comfort zone. It's something new. But again, I wanted to be the best for the team. And I don't know that everybody takes that mentality. I think it's important in sports. I think it's important in families. I think it's important in
Mm-hmm.
business. I think it
Mm-hmm.
really is important to say, where can I make the biggest difference? And,
Right.
like you talked about, submitting and surrendering that. Um, let's go back to the challenges, because perseverance really teaches us the most. When we're doing really well, we don't usually learn the most. We enjoy it, right?
Mm,
But it's when we get tested, not only, I think it was John Wooden that said, adversity introduces a man's character to
to
himself. It
himself.
doesn't, cause us to be a certain way. It actually reveals what is inside that maybe just now is coming out because of the situation. So, what were your biggest challenges? You talked a little bit about injuries. Were there any other challenges you faced?
Yeah, one was the attitude. Man, I had an attitude. I couldn't be told nothing, and enjoyed not telling. Again, that hat turning sideways, man. Coach say sit down, I'd stand up. Coach say go to the right, I go to the left. And so you can't let your greatest strength be your greatest weakness. I was gifted and talented, and again, I knew I was going to play. I knew I was going to get minutes, but you're really cheating yourself. So I had a reputation coming out of high school as a hot dog. Takes a lot of mustard to cover that hot dog, they would say. Me, a hot dog? Who would have ever thought, Leah? and then and then in college, they thought I was a head case, driving a teammate to pick up drugs, getting kicked off the team for hanging around knuckleheads. Jerry West, the great Jerry West for the Lakers. I was a rookie. We won the championship, and he wanted to groom me up to be the next Michael Cooper. And again, symbolically with this hat, the listeners can't see my hat's turned to the side. So he says, I want you to work on defense. Yeah, I'm like, she, she read. Back then, y'all should see who she is. Leah's turning as red as her shirt right now. And so that's before I came to the cross. So anyway, X-rated, X-rated. And I was like, I ain't playing no defense. I went out and scored 55 points in the prestigious LA Summer League in 3 quarters. In 3 quarters, I did my best Steph Curry before he was even born back then. I went out and did the complete opposite, scored 55 points, broke Dominique Wilkins and Isaiah Thomas scoring record. I saw both of them I was on the bench when both of them played. And the point of the matter is I wasn't coachable. So my biggest problem was myself. My biggest problem was getting over my ego. Ego has no amigo. And so, man, don't do that one. Get off of that LSD trip. Not making fun of drugs, but get off of that LSD trip. Lost, stupid, and dumb.
You really do have the best one-liners. I love that. Ego has no amigo. So good. So good. And I think for me, like maybe because I didn't have the type of talent you're talking about, that's the biggest thing I think about. I played with those athletes who were faster, stronger. One of my Olympic athletes was so talented. And she herself said that even through the Olympic years, like she never really pushed herself beyond, because she was able to do so well with what she had. And like you said, was able to cut corners a little bit. Whereas an athlete like myself, I would have been just, over on the side. My career would have ended so early. So being coachable was such a big part of my story, but it's a good reminder because you never stop that, right? No matter what level you go to. So tell me, when you became an analyst for ESPN, were you able to then take that and become coachable in that setting?
Yeah, well, actually, at 30 years old, and it still took a lot of work. It took a lot of work. And my wife would say, I don't know if he's still housebroken yet. We've been together 37 years. So what it was is 30 years old, I came to the cross in Australia, went from religion to a relationship. It was the movie Malcolm X was out with Spike Lee and Denzel Washington. My Aunt Carol and Uncle Mitch Hassan are actually Muslim. My cousins are first cousins are Muslim. So I was aware of the Nation of Islam. And again, just Adrian's story. And my buddy said, Mike Morrison said, Adrian, God's not impressed with performance. Your championship ring, the MVP trophy that you got at the prestigious East-West High School All-American game in high school over the great Michael Jordan, where Jordan scored 30 points and you scored your basketball number 24 points. Only way God is impressed with you is make a choice to put your trust in God through Jesus. And so I did. Leah, it was a work in progress because yes, I was saved, but I was still raw. Yes, I was saved, but when I first came into the ministry, I had a deck of cards saying, let's go. All right, after amen. All right, who wants to do this? Let's go. So, but he who is greatly sinned is also greatly forgiven. He who sins little is forgiven little. He who sins much is forgiven much. And so for me, I'm running, man. It's like, let me talk to this knucklehead. Let me talk to this person who everybody thinks is a head case because they still have potential. They're not throwaway junk if they choose not to quit on themselves.
And what is the biggest message that you try to get across to audiences when you do speak? I know you share your story, but what do you really want people to walk away with? You've shared a lot today, and it probably is connected to this, but what's that main point of your message?
Well, main point is when you see Adrian on this podcast, I turn my hat to the side about 15 times. That's my main point. He turns his hat a lot to the side. But actually be the change you want to see. You're not born a winner or a loser. You're born a chooser. I really think it's all about choices, making the right choices. And again, not quitting on yourself. In high school, had a lot of talent, but had an attitude and got kicked off the team for my choices. In college, had a lot of talent again with the great Len Bias, and I got kicked off the team 2 years before he passed for driving the teammate to pick up drugs. And in the pros, high school, college, and pros, Jerry West says, I want you to be like the defensive player of the year. And I went out and scored an offensive record summer league. So be the change you want to see. It's not about you, man. Don't soak up all the oxygen in the room. Share the planet.
That's a great message. And you're a dad. So raising your kids, was it important to pass down what you maybe didn't have, even though you said you came from a good family, but it kind of, you had a mindset and you went from religion to relationship. How has that helped you to raise your own children?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. One, my wife was blessed to be home. So every day of their life, Kim and I, we wanted to espouse the virtues of hard work. Our family was hard work, but it was also great dysfunction. And so what we tried to do is take what we liked about growing up and then what we didn't like. And so what we wanted them to do is make their own choices. The foundation of God was not optional. I thought I was a super cool dad. Look, you ain't got to get A's and B's, but you better get an A in religion class. You better get an A in theology class. So it was real cool. Math and science, I don't really care. You can get whatever you want, but you better get an A. And my daughter, Kylie, graduated from Liberty, both Kylie and Corey. So I got Adrian is 33, blessed, 33, born New Year's Day, real cool, works at Allstate and got his own production company. Kylie is a graphic designer, and Corey girl just is getting ready to graduate this week from Liberty as well, and fashion and photography. So my 28-year-old at the time, a few years ago, I'm not gonna lie to you, she graduated summa cum laude. And I said, "What is that?" She said, "Dad, that means it's none higher." So, I got limitations there. So we got 2 summa cum laudes and another one, my boy, too. So I give all the honor. But what I'm saying with the kids, they all are individuals. I was privileged to have my wife home, just encouraging them and talk to your kids, talk to them, have a tone, tact, and timing. And we don't have, you know what? I've got a lot of these around. But you know what? I don't have my championship stuff around for me because they have room for their own space. And that was just our story.
Yeah, it's so good. I think that we do want to make it better for our children, but like you said, we want to, take what we knew helped us. But what you mentioned about them being individuals, I was thinking when you're saying that, you didn't know what that title meant, but you knew what the NBA, MVP was for sure, right? We knew that our talk, right?
Don't judge me. Yeah, yeah.
No, but I love that because they paved their own way, and that was very important for me. I felt like my parents found the passion that I had, and then they just really primed me to be in the best environment, took me to lessons, took me, sacrificed me, with 2 jobs so that I could, afford to even go to tournaments and play travel ball. Right. And then, that allowed me to get the college scholarship. And so for my boys, it has been, I know when they were younger, that was it. They don't need to live out my dream. I want to help them find out what they love and what God's created them to do. And then try to foster that as much as possible, from what I'm able to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about leadership, because, a lot of these characteristics you're talking about just making some of these changes, but what were the qualities and the best coaches that you had? What were those qualities that they brought to the table?
It's interesting. I'm privileged to be able to speak at a leadership conference next week with CEOs and some heavy hitters. And I've really been privileged to have 3 Hall of Fame coaches. Now, didn't listen to them all at the same time, but I had 3 Hall of Fame coaches in high school. Hall of Fame coach Morgan Wooten, the winningest coach in the history of high school basketball. And he talked about 2 things all the time. One was priorities, God first. And he was a John Wooden knockoff. He and Dean Smith and Red Auerbach were his favorite coaches. Dean Smith, Red Auerbach, John Wooden. Morgan Wooten, winningest coach in the history of high school basketball, would talk priorities. God first, family second, school third, and basketball fourth. And then he would always pay it off and say, inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's really hard. Inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's really hard. Hall of Fame coach Lefty Driesell in college. I went to college. He's the inventor of Midnight Madness, where they started October 15th and you could start at midnight. And it was actually born out of just running a mile at the track with car lights on. So it was really uncivilized. Now today it's a big, celebration. Wow. But he would talk about this favorite quote from Gary Player. That was his favorite. The harder you work, the luckier you get. Now, I don't believe in luck, but I like what John Wooden would say. Chance favors the prepared. So that's what Lefty talked about, preparation. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And then in college, my other leader was Pat Riley, Showtime architect. And he told a story of this, Leah. He said he was 24 years old at the time. When I was with him, he was 45. So when he was in his second year as a pro and trying to get his identity on who he was, trying to find his rhythm, he just got married to his wife, and his dad, who was a coach in Schenectady, New York, was the last one to leave the church. And he rolled down his window and yelled out that he was pulling away. His mom and dad were pulling away. And he said, okay, Pat, remember, the time is now. At some place, at some point, at some time, you make a stand. And when you do, you kick some tail. 2 weeks later, those happened to be the last words he ever spoke to him. He died in a car accident. And so for my coach, that's the last thing his dad ever said to him. At some point, at some place, at some time, you make a stand. And when you do, you kick some tail. And so that bodes to me on having, what are your non-negotiables? Who are you really? Take away the accolades, take away the style and profile. Who are you really? And then let's go from there.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to consider that. And we do have different non-negotiables. A lot of people will sacrifice a lot and even compromise their values and standards to maybe receive what they think is the outcome they want, but eventually that catches up to you. And so I think it is important. Very good words for all of us. I'm thinking while you're talking, we're talking about as great coaches, good qualities for teammates. What about dealing with difficult people? What kind of advice would you give to others? So I'm putting you on the spot now. Maybe I just want advice for myself. I don't know. How do we best deal with difficult people?
Smack the hell out of them for starters. No. Oh, brother. Whoa. Where do you go from that one? You know what? Go back to John Wooden, where you just said, one point is you just said, adversity introduces it to himself. You know what I mean? How'd you say that one? I love that quote. I've heard
introduces a man's character to himself.
Yeah, it introduces a person's character to himself. So you're going to have difficult people, and it's not about you. So really, if you can remove your ego about it, how can you problem solve? Sometimes you got to ignore, sometimes flat out move away. Sometimes you got to stand your ground with the bully or the irritating person and let them know your boundaries. Sometimes people ain't going with their boundaries. So that's, again, welcome to humanity. That's a part of life. But I think that irritating person, the longer I'm privileged to live, that irritating person is not so much about them. It's about training you and your responses to them.
Wow. Very, very powerful. You're the first person I've asked that question to, but
I got a question. I want to ask you a question. I noticed your show and all of this. I got to ask you. Since as you are a leader and influencer, what is some of the best advice you have gotten? Coaches, parents, or whatever. What's something that you still remember?
For me, so much is tied up into two things that only you can control: your attitude and your effort. And you talk about choices, but I think it's a lot of times tied to that as well. Like your attitude is tied to our thought process and how we think about ourselves, how we think about others, our worldview. And for me, my faith, obviously being first and foremost in my life, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I try to have that joy from him and have that attitude, that positive mindset that I want to be the best, but not just for myself, one, for God's glory, first and foremost, but then also two, to make an impact in a positive way. I feel like we look around and there's enough negativity, more than we ever, anything want to see. And so for me, that standard, you were in the NBA, a lot of people look up to you. You're put on this kind of pedestal, and our level is a lot lower, but we had that success. We were on that podium. We won the gold medal. And so for those that were looking, I didn't want it just to be about like what I did on the field, but even more than that, what I did off the field. And then that work ethic, that ability that if you never stop, trying to give your very best, whatever that looks like, right? We have good days, we have bad days, but showing up on every day, and just giving what you have, because it is those days that you're not as strong and as confident that you probably learned the most. It was through our losses. We didn't lose a lot on Team USA, but it was through our losses that we had the most reflection. We learned the greatest, and we had to really dig deep and get back to the foundational things that we were trying to do.
Well, Ecclesiastes says that to the point, losses you've learned. It says it's better in Ecclesiastes to go to a house of mourning than a house of joy, because perspective is the key to life. So just where you were just saying with attitude, dealing with people, people that drive you nuts. What is your mindset? What is your perspective? Do I need to walk away from that person? Do I need to stand and say, hey, you are violating my boundaries? Do I need to just move fast, get into another situation? So attitude is everything. I love that, what you said. And even the Bible says, let this attitude be in you that was in Christ Jesus, that he humbled himself and made himself of no avail. So thank you for that encouragement. That is good stuff.
Yes. Well, you shared so much wonderful information with us. I love your takeaways. Honestly, inch by inch, life's a cinch, yard by yard. It's really hard. I just think of these things, and you need to share, to finish up. You need to share the saying that you talk about turning ordinary into extraordinary.
When
You talk about that. You say stuff about ordinary, extraordinary. You have like a little saying. You don't know?
I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. I have to charge you. That's another.
Okay, I'm writing it down the next time you say it, and I'll be ready.
And you know what? As we encourage folks, and it's not about you, and trying to have a cause bigger than yourself, and knowing that you have a helper in God, and God helps put his extra on your ordinary. Because somebody can say, man, I'm just an ordinary person. I'm just a natural man, a natural woman. And that's like perfect. That is perfect. God puts his super on your natural, his extra on your ordinary, his on your usual, his I am on your possible. So he makes you supernatural, extraordinary, unusual men and women of God. And you bring the I am, because that's what he's called, the I am, on your possible. It can even make the impossible possible with the I am. Drop the mic.
There you go. That's it. That's exactly what I was talking about. You knew that the whole time. All right. Well, how can people find you, check you out? Do you have social media?
Yeah, that's the wild part. I work with ESPN, and inspirational speaker. My kids have been trying to get me. So call my agent. It's on this raggedy cell phone. I dropped this cell phone. This thing looks like World War III. I got to get a new one. But I don't know, Liz. I'm somewhere on the internet, man. It's in the bat signal. But USAO.org and ESPN, and they find Uncle A. But they've been trying to get me on that social media, and it's like,
I know.
People who work on the media are weird.
Let your kids tape you and let them share it, because people need to hear your story. Well, I'm excited that people are going to get to hear what you shared with me today. I love what you're doing. You're changing so many lives. And so again, thank you for sharing with us today.
Give you a little saying and roll on out here. I love this one. I hope this is an encouragement for your audience. I remember hearing this one. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend.
Yes, so good. Thank you so much, Adrian Branch. You just listened to another episode of the Gold Standard Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Hope you were encouraged by today's message.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Gold Standard Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please share it with a friend. You can post on social media and tag @Leah20USA or use #Gold Standard Podcast. Make sure you also subscribe so you get notified each week as a new episode releases. You can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. We appreciate your reviews as they help encourage others to listen in. Until next time, live out the gold standard and keep turning your goals into reality.